Watching the Love Island drama unfold solely through TikTok has truly been a unique experience, to say the least. I wasn't actually gonna watch Love Island because, quite frankly, I could feel myself losing brain cells every time I tried. I'm kidding, sorta. After watching everything, now I'm invested, so I guess the joke's on me. Originally, I was trying to piece together the drama just by watching TikTok clips, and it would be so confusing because this girl that literally everyone was shitting on 1 week, the next she suddenly made a comeback redemption arc of the century for no discernible reason that I could see. Then one day I see people really shipping this couple. Then I go to ask my sister, the resident Love Island expert, about said couple, and suddenly they're no longer together. Even though, I kid you not, literally 2 days ago everybody was saying that they're endgame and gonna win the entire show. I figured there would be other nosy bitches out there like me, so I took it upon myself to brave the wild waters of Love Island lore, watch a full season for the first time in my life in order to get you the tea. So like I just said, I haven't seen any other season of Love Island, so I'm lacking in that insight, which is a little bit of a bummer, but maybe that's a good thing. I've got a set of fresh eyes. Maybe I can throw some logic and common sense into the mix because it's clearly lacking around these parts. Alright, so if you're unfamiliar, what is Love Island? It is at its core a reality TV show, which on the surface it seems kind of basic. We've got a bunch of single, horny guys and gals looking to find love. They throw these people on an island in Fiji, pair them up, mix and match them, drama ensues, and then eventually one couple gets the opportunity to win $100,000. Now, the interesting thing about this show is they film and air these episodes almost simultaneously, meaning there's almost no lag time between when they film and when the episode airs. So like, let's say they film what's happening, what's going down on a Tuesday. The footage that they shot on Tuesday is edited and put into an episode, and it actually airs on like Thursday. That's crazy. So because it's happening almost in real time, fans, viewers of the show have the opportunity to vote on what happens and actually affect the outcome of the show. That aspect has proven to be both really cool and a total shit show. We have two major components happening: the actual show and the social media scene. The season that we're talking about currently is Love Island USA Season 7. You may be familiar with Season 6 of this show, which featured people like Leah, Rob, Serena, Cordell, that whole gang. You may be like, Amanda, why is it called Love Island USA? Well, actually, there's a Love Island UK, there's a Love Island Australia, and I was looking this up on Wikipedia. Apparently, there's a Love Island any fucking country you can think of, but today we are only talking about Love Island USA Season 7, which the first episode premiered on June 3rd of this year, 2025. Since then, episodes that are usually 1 to 1.5 hours long have been airing every single day, minus Wednesdays. On Saturdays, there's this thing called Love Island After Sun, which I actually skipped those episodes because they were kind of talk show vibes, recapping what had already happened, which I was binge watching the show. I don't need to recap what's been going on. I literally just saw it. But they have like exclusive content and stuff. Like, if you want to watch it, it's still a fun time. Also, apparently, it's only really worth watching if you've seen previous seasons of Love Island. Ever since June 3rd, we've been getting new episodes of this show every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's crazy! We've now been watching these Islanders for about a month, and if you're like me and have been watching the show, unfortunately that does mean we've dedicated over 30 hours of our life to watching this shit. Another crazy thing about Love Island is that everybody on the island, aka everybody in the villa, aka the Islanders, have zero access to the outside world. They don't have their phones, they don't get told what time of day it is, they don't know what day it is. They're just in their own little bubble where they wear bikinis all day and then make love at night in a room filled with 8 other people. The show is hosted by Ariana Madix from Vanderpump Rules and narrated by Scottish comedian Ian Sterling. Okay, let me introduce you to the original Islanders. We've got Huda, Shelley, Alandria, Bella spelled B-E-L-L-E-A, Ulyssa, Austin, Taylor, Jeremiah, Nick, and Ace. After getting to kiss 2 guys each of their choosing, the girls got to choose who they're initially coupled up with. So the first couples were Huda and Jeremiah, Bella and Nick, Alandria and Taylor. Shelley originally chose Ace, but Ulyssa stole him from her. Then we've got Ulyssa and Ace, and then finally Shelley and Austin. These couples barely get time with each other before 2 bombshells enter the villa. A bombshell is just a new hot person arriving on the island to spice things up. These bombshells are Charlie and Cierra. Charlie chooses Shelley as the person he's most interested in off the bat, and Cierra chooses Nick. I will say, I haven't been watching Love Island as it was airing. I literally only started like watching the show, I think probably after episode 30 aired. So Up until that point, I was just getting the tea through TikTok, and then I went back and watched the whole thing. But because I didn't really know what was going on until like literally a few days ago, I wish I could fully see the social media scene in real time as I was watching the show. So I feel like there may be some gaps in my knowledge. So yeah, that's all to say I'm pretty aware, but I may not be totally like 100% caught up with the social media scene that's been happening alongside the show, but I'm trying my best. However, I believe that after this first episode aired and people were looking into the whole cast, like, you know, we got, actually, I'm pretty sure the cast was announced before the show even started airing, so maybe this was a development before the first episode even dropped. But there was this video of one of the Islanders, Yulissa, a video of her circulating where she was seen saying the N-word. As a result, about a fourth of the way through episode 2, there was a short and sweet explanation by the narrator that said, Yulissa has left the villa. Honestly, I think low-key this really set the scene and set the stage for some shit to go down later. I don't know if this season is fundamentally different from any other season prior because, you know, this is my first time watching, but the speed of the turnaround between the public backlash and Ulissa's departure was pretty crazy. And as a result of the speed, I don't know if this sent viewers on a power trip or if this is just how the internet reacts to things nowadays. Obviously, saying a slur is bad and the person should be held accountable. And I do agree with the producer's decision to take her off of the show. And I also think that people are well within their right to be mad. But there's a difference between being mad and sending people death threats, right? Then in episode 4, we get another 2 bombshells, Hannah and Amaya. So obviously this is the very basic bare bones stuff that's been happening in the show so far. Let me explain to y'all a couple of fun facts that we learned by this point. I know what you're thinking. How can I look as good as Amanda? It seems impossible. Specifically, how can I have hair as luscious and silky smooth as hers? All right, I'll stop gatekeeping. I've added some products into my hair care routine that have been absolute game changers for me. Mainly this rice water protein shampoo and conditioner from the brand Kitsch. Now you may not have immediately clocked that they were shampoo and conditioner because if you haven't noticed, they're solid. To use them, you just lather them up and massage it into your hair like so, and then you can place them back on Kitsch's self-draining soap dish. And you know what? By using these products, you're helping the environment and reducing single-use plastic, which is always and forever a slay. I've been using this shampoo and conditioner for the past few weeks, and already my hair feels healthier. There's a beautiful softness and shine to it. That's because the rice water in the shampoo and conditioner helps reduce split ends and improve hair texture as well as aid hair growth. They're also free of parabens, silicones, and sulfates, which is important to me because I really value high-quality ingredients and formulas. So y'all, don't miss out on the shampoo and conditioner. I've also been really loving their satin pillowcases and microfiber hair towel turban, which are now staples for me. Kitsch ships in the US and internationally to over 90 countries, so use the link in my description box and or my code Amanda25 to get 25% off your order, which will auto-apply at checkout. Thank you so much to Kitsch for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. First of all, Ace. He has a tattoo of his own name plastered across his back, as well as, and I'm not sure if this information is 100% accurate because I just saw a TikTok about it. I don't know. I couldn't get confirmation from the man himself, but apparently the baby that's tattooed across his chest is himself as a baby wearing a crown. Speaking of Ace though, I will bring up a rumor that has been circulating pretty much since the beginning. When Shelly and Ace first saw each other in episode 1, they revealed that they had actually met before and DM'd a little bit, but it didn't go anywhere because I guess they were living in separate places. But because of their like internet history and like likes in certain posts and whatever, you know, the internet does its research. And apparently there's a narrative, there's some speculation going on that they secretly entered the show as a couple because, you know, like I said, of their associations with each other. But who's to say? I don't really know, you don't know, we all don't know. Also, what happened during these first few episodes, everybody played this game where everyone revealed like different stats and such, like how many people have you kissed, how many people have you slept with, how many nudes have you sent. So some fun facts that really stuck out to me, my boy Austin has cheated 6 times and has sent over 1,000 nudes. Most of the guys had around like 20 bodies, but some of them had over 100, which dang. So now let me dive into the dynamics a little bit. Let me tell you the nitty-gritty details of what's going on, the relationships, how people are feeling. But before I really start this rundown and my opinions that will inevitably seep their way in here, I think it's important to note that reality shows sometimes low-key evil. I feel like they're very exploitive of the people involved. I think the well-being, emotional, mental, physical of the people participating in these types of shows sometimes gets overlooked in the name of entertainment. We are seeing a narrative crafted by the producers of the show. We don't see everything that goes down, and at times we're only feeling a particular way because they want us to feel a particular way. It's fun to have our opinions and our discussions. Obviously, I love talking about stuff like that, but keep in mind, we don't know these people. You may think you do because we've been seeing like an hour of their lives every single day for the past month, but that's only an hour of their day every single day. What about the other 23? You know what I'm saying? And also, if you're watching the show and also participating in the social media side of this too, misinformation spreads like wildfire. So make sure you check your sources before telling someone something you saw in a TikTok comment. I'm literally guilty of that. I just told you about the Ace baby tattoo thing. Anyways, now that we've got that out of the way, moving on. First, we've got Jeremiah and Huda. They were locked in since day one. They're both territorial. Huda did not want that man entertaining anyone else. And Jeremiah, you know, from what we saw, made his own decision to also like not really entertain anyone else while he was with Huda. Like, he didn't really participate in the challenges earlier on out of respect for Huda. But here's the thing. As the episodes went on, things got a little bit more rocky. When Amaya came in and showed interest in Jeremiah, Huda was really pissed at her and made negative comments directed at her, which were not good. And I think this incident is when public opinion took a turn for the worse for Miss Huda. It was at this point where I started seeing a lot of negative comments and posts and TikToks towards Huda. I saw people saying that she's trying so hard to be Leah from last season, people making hateful drawings, making fun of her appearance, making fun of her appearance pre-surgery, so like from years ago. I mean, everyone online had no fucking mercy. And even more so, the other islanders in the villa did not seem to like Huda or Jeremiah at all. And this is a theme that I will touch upon, you know, throughout the video, but for whatever reason, the sentiment in the villa from now until, like I said, literally the end, has been anti-love at first sight, which is crazy because y'all, this isn't Ho Island, this is Love Island. The villa seemed very against people who found a strong connection off the bat. And potentially, was it a tactic to ensure that there's not a couple front runner that viewers can get attached to, aka like it was a game strategy in order to make it to the end? I don't know, and I don't know if it's like this every season. I don't know if like people are usually anti-people coupling up and being like tunnel vision super early. What I do know was that it was so fucking annoying for the conversations between these islanders over and over and over again to be like, I'm so open, I'm literally so open. And then an hour later, they're upset and jealous because the person they're interested in is exploring other people. Like, hello, double standards this season? We're going crazy. Huda is also a mother. She had a daughter at a very young age, isn't currently with her baby daddy. She confided this in Jeremiah, and I thought he took it pretty well, honestly. I don't know. So that's Huda and Jeremiah. Then we have Shelly and her many men. I saw a post before I started watching the show about how Shelly isn't getting any attention even though she's the prettiest one in the villa. Y'all, are we watching the same show? All my girl gets is attention, which, you know, as she should. She is gorgeous. Shelly was in a love triangle for a while, low-key, with Ace and Austin. Charlie initially showed interest in her, but then pivoted towards Hannah, the bombshell that entered with Amaya, and they hit it off like very immediately, which if you've been paying attention, that does not bode well for them. The chemistry between Shelly and Ace, at least to me, was evident pretty much immediately. So much so that I wonder why they were so content. It seemed like a while to me, but looking back, maybe it wasn't that long, but it seemed like they were pretty content for a while not being coupled up. And I don't put much stock into the, you know, rumors that circulate on the internet, and the one that I'm particularly alluding to is the were Shelly and Ace a couple before they entered the villa rumor. However, it seemed to me like they were very much on the same page about not coupling up super early and then getting together like as the show progressed. Even though it seemed very clear that they were both very into each other from the beginning, that whole thing was a little sus to me. Because how are y'all like so completely on the same page about that? You know what I mean? I don't know. Also, they both seem smart. And at the end of the day, this is a game that you can approach strategically. Ace in particular strikes me as the type of guy to come into this with a game plan. And here's the thing, he was actually the driving force between the anti-love bombing agenda that I saw in the villa and then people followed suit. That's just just my speculation. Of course, I could be totally wrong again, because I feel like whenever I say things like that, like, what if he wasn't the driving force? What if they cut out a major moment in the show? We only get shown what they want us to see. So even though it's called a reality TV show, these opinions are not based on fact. They're not based on reality. They're based off of the narrative that we got in the show. And I think it's fair and fun to have discussions about what we're shown on the show, as long as we kind of keep a mental divide between what the narrative happening on the show and like reality. So anyway, that's Ace, Shelley, and Austin. Now we have Alandria and Taylor. I don't know if I feel this way because when I was watching these earlier episodes, I already knew what was going to happen, but I will say, at no point did I feel like Taylor was romantically or even really emotionally invested in Alandria, just based on like his body language, based on the stuff that he said, the things that he did. Alandria did decide to kiss Ace in one of the first challenges, and Taylor, as well as Austin, was interested in pursuing Sierra when she first came in, so, you know, I think that goes to show about where the connections were at. But that then brings us to Sierra, Nick, and Bella, the love triangle. Bella and Nick were coupled up, but Bella was definitely like the most conservative of the group in terms of physical affection. Like, she wasn't really kissing people on the lips. She wasn't, you know, going all out in the challenges until one of the last challenges that she did, where she really went all out. But you know, my girl, she's a lover girl. She had only been with like one other person prior to this show. And like I said, as the episodes went on, she was definitely pushed out of her comfort zone in an effort to win over Nick, whose head was turned in Sierra's direction. Thus, in the recoupling, Jeremiah chose Huda, not a surprise. Taylor chose Alandria, not a surprise. Charlie chose Hannah, not a surprise. Ace chose Amaya. A little bit of a surprise to me, but maybe that's because, again, I was watching this like retrospectively. But Ace, listen, one thing about Ace is he's always gonna pick the bombshells. And then Austin chose Shelley. He, you know, is in a love triangle with her, liked her for a while. Nick was really two-timing Bella and Sierra. Like, not a good look for him. His fucking whole 50-50, 80-20, that shit annoyed me, okay? But anyways, after he chose Sierra and him were pretty locked in from that point. Like, not as locked in as Huda and Jeremiah, but, you know, they were always like pretty much together from that point on. All right, so now we get into this next era. Huda eventually reveals that she is a mother to everyone, and this was literally her conversation with Nick. It was hilarious. I'm a mommy. Mommy? I'm a mom. Mamacita. No, I'm a mommy. A mom of what? A dog? I have a daughter. Like in real life? Yeah. Like a daughter, like a real baby? Yeah, like a human child. In episode 9, we get 3 new bombshells: Pepe, Jalen, and Iris. Jaden initially goes for Alandria, you know, sticks with it. That's pretty much the only one he's involved with. Iris initially wants Jeremiah, but does not pursue him too hard after seeing his situation with Huda. Pepe initially goes for Sierra. He actually did say that Sierra was his type, but based on his track record for the rest of the show, you know, we will get into that later. He then quickly pivots to Hannah. Hannah then enters this mini love triangle, but she eventually decides that she wants to pursue her connection with Charlie, leaving Pepe in the dust. Alandria is in a love triangle with Taylor and Jalen, who are both countrymen, and Alandria has stated many a time that that is in fact her type. She loves a countryman. Ace, like I said, loves his bombshells, or rather, honestly, it seemed like he loves the idea of bombshells, loves the idea of exploring. He had a little chat with Iris, but mind you, he's currently coupled up with Amaya after choosing her. That couple went south real quick because Ace was uncomfortable with Amaya cuddling him and calling him babe and stuff, even though, like, in terms of the whole babe thing, it was less of a term of endearment and more of just, like, her vocabulary. But it bothered him so much to the point that he chose to sleep outside in soul ties rather than in the same bed as Amaya. So even though Amaya and Ace are technically coupled up, 0 sparks are flying. Ace is still pursuing Shelley, although honestly it seemed to me not once during this whole season has he not pursued Shelley. Like, he was always low-key pursuing Shelley from the first episode. So the Ace, Shelley, Austin love triangle is still a thing. Then we get to the main event, the main course, which of course, is Huda and Jeremiah. They had such an intense honeymoon phase. They were all over each other. They got intimate with each other. They were talking about life outside the villa. Keep in mind, y'all, it's been a week. It's literally been a week. But, you know, here's the thing. Their downfall was just as intense and just as quick. It low-key all started with Pancake Gate. Basically, Jeremiah made pancakes for Huda. They weren't cooked properly, so Huda asked Taylor to make a new batch for her. Then Huda got mad at Jeremiah because another man was making pancakes for her instead of him. Like, she was like, another man shouldn't be making pancakes for me. This definitely brought out the worst sides of Huda and Jeremiah, like they're fighting with each other. It caused Huda to crash out. It caused Jeremiah to act like immaturely. She kept saying to him like, I need you to step it up, and he thought she was being unfair, and he really didn't like when she would name call him. Like there was this one really bad argument where she was like cussing him out, and she would do that to people who really honestly didn't even deserve it at all. Like she did that to Amaya, she did that to Iris, just like honestly any bombshell who came in and showed an interest in Jeremiah, which again was not a good thing to do and made her look really bad and caused the audience to very much turn on her. And keep in mind that viewers already weren't the biggest fans of Huda because of like a number of reasons like I just mentioned, but after this specific crash out and like fight between her and Jeremiah, oh man. So then it was time for the first vote of the season, the first time America would have their say in what goes down in the show. We were going to choose who the new bombshell should end up with, and the viewers came up with something very devious. They specifically voted for Iris to couple up with Jeremiah, knowing that it would cause Huda to crash out even further. And honestly, that seems pretty fucked up to me. After watching the show, it seems really clear to me that Huda has specific triggers that lead to emotional outbursts, and it seems very evil to do something to purposefully trigger one of these outbursts. So, the results of the vote are revealed. Jalen was voted to couple up with Alandria, not a surprise. Pepe was voted to couple up with Hannah, not a surprise, but at the time this was pretty devastating considering Hannah had just chosen Charlie over him, and so now she was forced to be in a couple with Pepe, so awkward. And finally, successfully, the operation was pulled off and Iris was voted to couple up with Jeremiah, which meant that the three islanders in jeopardy of being voted off were the other half of these couples, aka Taylor, Charlie, and Huda. Charlie is the only bombshell out of these three, aka he's been here for the least amount of time. The OG boys are all pretty close, particularly Nick and Jeremiah. Like there were different points in the show where Nick and Jeremiah were like, oh my god, you're my bestie, you're my bro. So it was up to the islanders to choose which person out of these three who would get kicked off the island for good. And when this was revealed to them, the islanders were crying as if they were just told they had to kill a person. It was crazy. Austin voted for Taylor, which was slightly surprising given, like I said, the OG boy bond. Sierra, Shelly, and Amaya voted for Charlie, which seemed sort of like the safe vote, so not that surprising. But Amaya voting for Charlie was kind of ironic considering she rejected Charlie's advancements towards her to do right by Hannah, but she contributed in Charlie leaving the villa, which low-key did Hannah dirty, so I don't know, it's just kind of ironic. Ace and Nick voted for Huda. Now, there were a lot of memes about this decision, a lot of memes about Ace laughing when it was revealed that Iris was supposed to be coupled up with Jeremiah. But in terms of the voting situation, with Ace and Nick voting for Huda, particularly a popular meme was people were referencing the moment in Attack on Titan where Reindeer and Ballerina Cappuccina revealed themselves to be the Armored and Colossal Titan, because like I just said, all the guys are close, so it was kind of a stab in the back for your closest friends in the villa to try and vote off your girl. But since Charlie had the most votes, he was voted off, causing Hannah to sob her eyes out. My girl was devastated. Luckily, she had my man Pepito to comfort her in bed, and they got busy pretty soon after Charlie left. So yeah, Hannah and Pepe, they got close. They became like a couple. After this debacle, Jeremiah and Austin became a duo, a little like bro solidarity, if you will. Taylor, Nick, and Ace became a trio, and this trio would last like literally all the way throughout the show, aka the anti-Jeremiah love bombing trio. Again, guys, what the fuck is the logic logic here. Ace claims that since Jeremiah started something super quick with Huda and later on with another bombshell, that he's a chronic love bomber. What about Pepe? Huh? I've heard not a peep of the same energy towards Pepe, even though he did like pretty much the same damn thing. Also, what about Sierra, who's pretty much been Team Nick ever since the beginning? Like, there's no consistency with these people. Arguably, it works in your best interest if a couple closes off super early, unless you're interested in a person in that couple. And we have literally a real life example of this phenomenon, because the only reason Iris was talking to Ace was because Jeremiah and Huda were closed off. So this recoupling led to the irreversible demise between Jeremiah and Huda. Because the two of them were the strongest couple in the villa by far, the both of them figured that the voters were trying to tell them that the other person wasn't right for them, like the other person was toxic. America was trying to look out for them. Like, that's both what they were thinking individually, and the two became very distrustful of each other. So the three new couples, let me remind you, are Alandria and Jalen, Iris and Jeremiah, and Hannah and Pepe, and these three couples all went on a beach date together. Huda was very upset when they came back. Huda had this conversation with Iris that was pretty funny that you might have heard on TikTok. What was the date? I was just like sitting down on the beach. My dream date. Cute. And he knows that. That shit was hilarious, considering Iris was very much trying to downplay the date as much as possible to spare Huda's feelings, and Huda still hit her back with the my dream date. And B, Jeremiah had absolutely no say in what the date was whatsoever. Huda was also mad at Jeremiah that he didn't check in on her after she was almost voted off. So this whole Jeremiah-Huda situation has really made the villa dislike the two of them together, and quite frankly, most of them didn't seem to like Huda in general in the first place. The Ace trio does not seem to like Jeremiah for the love bombing like I mentioned. Then we get another recoupling. The guys got to choose the girl they wanted to be with as long as the feeling was mutual. Nick and Sierra remained, Pepe and Hannah remained, Taylor and Alandria remained, which put Jalen in jeopardy because he also chose Alandria. Ace chose Shelly, so they became a couple. Austin chose Amaya, and they became a couple. And finally, Jeremiah chose Iris, so they remained, which put Huda in jeopardy. Then the Islanders had to vote whether they were going to kick off Jalen or Huda. All the girls backed Huda, all the guys backed Jalen. The only two that didn't, which ultimately resulted in Huda being saved, were Taylor and Ace. For Taylor, it makes sense considering Jalen was going after his girl, so why would he want Jalen in the villa? For Ace, I don't really know why he chose Huda. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me given everything that's been going down, but I don't know, maybe he was more anti-Jeremiah than anti-Huda, and maybe he actually liked Huda, I don't know. So anyway, Jalen was kicked off, but he then became TikTok's princess. Like, he literally gained 1 million followers on TikTok so fast. He has a very cute, wholesome vibe to him. Going on Love Island was his first time going out of the country, and you know, he likes to visit his grandma in his free time. He bought a cake for himself to celebrate 1 million followers. So all of that, the people are big fans of Jalen. Then Megan Thee Stallion entered the villa, not as a bombshell or anything, just as like a guest host, and she introduced 2 new bombshells, TJ and Andrena, who everyone on TikTok was going feral over because everything about her is tea. I mean, look at her. So the bombshell that I mentioned before that Jeremiah and really hit it off with was Andrena. And, you know, like I said before, that happened really quickly, like Jeremiah and Andrena's progression. Which brings me to the second voting opportunity for fans. Everyone was told to vote for their favorite Islander, and then the bottom 3 guys and bottom 3 gals would be in jeopardy. This ended up being Amaya, Iris, and Hannah for the girls, and Pepe, Austin, and Jeremiah for the boys. The girl Islanders in the villa had to decide which girl to kick out, and the boy Islanders had to decide which boy to kick out. The girls ended up picking Hannah, and the guys picked Jeremiah. Now, this was devastating for Hannah and Pepe because they had a romance blooming. I mean, we thought it was over for Hannah. She was crying up a storm, but now she was with Pepe and everything was fine and dandy. And this decision would actually haunt Pepe for a little bit of time. Hannah just couldn't catch a break. Here's the thing. Do I really understand why they voted out Jeremiah? No. Was it probably just because like they didn't like him or the love bombing situation? Maybe. I personally, I don't dislike Jeremiah. I don't like him. I found him to be immature at times, but I never thought that he was like playing huda or being disingenuous or anything. I've seen people on TikTok embracing him because of the fact that he's a self-proclaimed nerd and he watches anime and reads books. And I just saw a TikTok actually of him reading one of the Sarah J Maas A Cotard series books shirtless, and honestly, like, that gave me the ick. I was like, brother. But anyways, now it's time for Casa Amor, and Casa Amor, it's like bombshells to the extreme. So basically what happens is usually I think the guys leave the villa and go to Casa Amor, and they meet like a bunch of new girls, and then the girls stay in the villa, the original girls, and they meet a bunch of new guys. And basically Casa Amor is to test whether the original relationships that you've made, like the original couples that you've been in, it's to test the strength of that relationship. So by meeting all these new people, at the end of it, you get to decide, okay, do you want to pursue this new relationship that you've like started to explore in Casa, or do you go back to your original couple? And it's supposed to be really dramatic. There are betrayals. Like, one person may say, hey, you know, I actually prefer my original couple. Meanwhile, their partner is, you know, making out with someone in Casa. But the thing is that the reason why it's so dramatic is because you have a handful of strong connections going into Casa, because then that leaves room for betrayal. This season, there was pretty much like not really any solid couples. I mean, Jeremiah and Huda would have been interesting to see, but they had just gotten broken up, and Jeremiah has now left the villa. So, I mean, we've got Cierra and Nick, who were like kind of established at this point, as well as Taylor and Alandria. For the most part, a lot of the people were single, which is why this time they did Casa Amor differently. Basically, the girls went to Casa, everybody started from a clean slate, everybody was single, and then immediately got recoupled with, you know, a bunch of different guys and gals. I'm just going to read off this list to you. There's a lot of new people incoming, but don't worry, not everybody is super relevant here. In the villa, we have Pepe and Grayson, Ace and Vanna, Austin and Jaden, Taylor and Coco, and Clark and Nick. In Casa, we have JD and Huda, Sierra and Elan, Shelly and Chris, Iris and Zach, Andrena and Brian, and Zach and Alandria. Now, obviously, I just said I know I've thrown a lot of new names at you, so let me narrow down the herd for you. So the following people were kicked off pretty immediately due to a series of dramatic recouplings that I'm honestly not going to get into, because like at the end of the day, I feel like these people were only here for like 1 or 2 episodes. These were the people that got kicked off: JD, Zach with a C, Vanna, and Coco. Out of the 4 of these people, the only person that really caused, I would say, like a major stir, at least on social media, was Vanna, because she has had a noticeable amount of work done, and like, you know, plastic surgery, fillers, Botox, whatever, but she's only 21. And so obviously people were up in arms, making fun of her appearance, which is something that we're not gonna do. Also, apparently she was allergic. Okay, I don't know who said this or where it was said, but my sister told me that Vanna was allergic to the pillows in the villa, which made her face more swollen than normal, which did not help the situation. People were roasting her, pulling out yearbooks to speculate when she started getting work done, which is crazy. I would say as a whole, I do think the whole plastic surgery thing, like, that is an interesting conversation to be had if we're taking like individual people out of the equation. Like, I don't want to talk about Vanna specifically, but like in general, I've actually talked about this before. I was pretty against plastic surgery as a whole, but then I think I was on TikTok or something, and I saw a comment that was like, well, what about trans people? And then I was like, that actually really got me thinking, because what is it exactly am I against? Like, because I do support trans people getting surgery to become and like feel more comfortable in their body, but then how can I be against like these women doing pretty much the same thing? And also, where do I draw the line? I mean, am I anti-makeup because it's not natural? Am I anti-shaving because it's not natural? Like, I don't know, like, why is surgery a big deal? I've come to the conclusion that I think my discomfort with honestly any sort of alteration, especially when it comes to really young people partaking, is that like it makes us miserable. We can say that people are, you know, having these alterations done for their own happiness, but why are they unhappy in the first place? Because they saw someone else that has been marketed as the ideal form of attractiveness and felt compelled to replicate that. But then, by replicating that, they then potentially doom someone else to the same fate. And it's just like a vicious cycle derived out of a desire to adhere to a particular beauty standard and become attractive. It's a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. Because if you don't conform, you may feel ugly. If you do conform, you potentially spend a lot of money, sometimes permanently alter yourself, and perpetuate this beauty standard and normalize these sort of operations and alterations. And you know what the fuck of it all is? People get plastic surgery probably in part so that people like won't make fun of their face or body, or they're trying to fix some sort of insecurity that they have. But I've seen many cases where people are making fun of the plastic surgery looking bad. So then, like, what was the fucking point? Like, nobody wins. Now, you can choose to ignore beauty standards, but that's a really hard thing to do, like almost impossible in my opinion. Anyway, sorry I went on a little tangent right there. And maybe it's not that deep because, like, I believe everybody should be able to do what they want with their bodies, but it is that deep if millions of people are feeling shitty about their appearance for no reason. That's the thing that saddens me. Anywho, where were we? So basically, by the end of Casa Amor, like, obviously there was a lot of mix and matching here, and these are like the official couples. Austin and Jaden, Amaya and Zach, with a K, Pepe and Grayson, Andrina and Brian, Iris and TJ, Ace and Shelly, Chris and Huda, and Taylor and Clark. You may be like, wait, Amanda, what the fuck? What about Alandria? Well, she was kicked off along with Nick. Just kidding. They were actually sent on a date and were given the choice to return as a couple or like leave the island forever. And obviously they chose to return as a couple. Then they came back. Nick recoupled up with Sierra. So Alandria is now like sort of single, but in a sort of love triangle with Taylor and Clark, while this other guy named Elan is in a love triangle with Nick and Sierra, which is kind of funny because Elan is like sort of a different version of Nick. Like they, you know, appearance-wise, very similar vibes. Austin and Jaden, like they seem like a pretty decent match, although Brian is also interested in Jaden since him and Andrina aren't really hitting it off. Amaya and Zach are very much like the goofy-ish couple. By this point, Amaya has definitely become the people's princess. The viewers have fallen in love with how she's unapologetically herself, a sensitive gangster, serves vocals. I never said I was perfect. I never said I didn't have any flaws. And how she uses metaphors like there's no tomorrow. Maybe I'm just not your cup of tea to be drinking, and if so, don't drink it, bitch. Iris and TJ are very unproblematic and honestly uneventful. Pepe and Grayson are kind of in the same boat. Chris was initially interested in Shelly and was in a love triangle for a minute with Shelly and Ace. After a couple tries, though, he decided to invest his energy in Huda, who he's like technically they're in a couple, so makes sense. Now Taylor and Clark. I haven't actually seen a lot of posts about them myself personally on my TikTok For You page, but based on, you know, what I've been seeing, like, and how the voting has actually affected the show, the people do not like them at all. Honestly, like, I'm very neutral about them. All I can see, like, is that from the way Taylor interacts with Clark compared to how he interacted with Alandria, it seems so clear that he did not really have feelings for Alandria. Taylor is giddy and all over Clark, like he's not afraid to be physical with her. He seems so, like everything is screaming how much more invested he is in Clark than Alandria. And I imagine that people did not like this switch up, considering that he and Alandria have been paired up with each other for like several weeks now, and after only a mere 3 days, now he's like completely team Clark. And the people in the villa are kind of in the same boat, especially since like everybody loves Alandria, like they don't want to see her go. But yeah, Alandria low-key seemed like she was constantly in jeopardy of being kicked off for like several episodes. Now guys, now we get into some tea. The heart rate challenge and the stand on business challenge. These episodes changed some shit. It caused pretty much the public opinion to flip-flop, do a complete 180. Huda, the girl who had been getting the most shit earlier on, is now being taken back by the people. The people are embracing her. They're making bad bitch edits of her. And conversely, the people are hating on Sierra, Shelly, and Alandria, calling them mean girls. And seeing this twist, this switch up on TikTok without watching the show, was crazy. I was like, guys, what are y'all talking about? Are your opinions really this fickle? Basically, the heart rate challenge is people doing scandalous, raunchy things in an attempt to get people's heart rate up. During this challenge, Shelly got extremely pissed off at Huda because at one point, Huda singled out Ace and was really trying to get his heart rate up, and Huda was the one who got his heart rate up the most. After this happened, like, Shelly, her body language immediately changed, and Huda was trying to, like, reconcile things with her even in the moment. But, you know, when they started getting to talking, Huda expressed that she was confused because back in the day when she was like tunnel vision for Jeremiah and being really overprotective of him, Shelly was the one telling Huda that it was just a challenge and to like stop ragging on the other bombshells. But then when Huda is saying it now, like as an excuse, well, not as an excuse, but as an explanation, like, oh, it was just a challenge, I didn't mean anything by it, she's confused about now why there's like a double standard because Shelly was the one who said it was just a challenge in the first place, and now that same logic doesn't apply for Huda. Shelly was also mad about the fact that Huda said that one of the lines of reasoning for coupling up with Chris was that she wanted to bring him back to the villa so that Shelly could explore Chris as well. Shelly thought that that was being disingenuous because now Huda's like really trying to pursue him now, and she thought that that wasn't a very girl's girl move. So here's the thing, in terms of this isolated specific situation, based on the show and what we've been shown, it really seems like Shelly and Alandria were being very hypocritical because in this challenge, the heart rate challenge, I cannot emphasize enough how everybody was kissing everybody. Like, everybody was all over everybody, regardless of whether they were in a couple with a really strong connection. Like, all the girls were making out with Sierra, even though, like, Nick was right there. And Shelly herself, matter of fact, was making out with Chris, then doubled back for seconds. Oh, yes, she did. So then Ace actually brought up how, you know, the whole doubling back thing made him uncomfortable, and Shelly was like, well, I thought you said we could explore, and he was like, well, I don't understand because that seems hypocritical to me because me and Huda have nothing going on, whereas you and Chris are actively trying to explore your connection, like, outside of this challenge. We're in an active love triangle together. And all the people on TikTok were like, wow, Shelly must really be messing up if she's making me agree with Ace, which low-key, yeah. On top of that, like getting to Alandria and her involvement in this, Alandria and Cierra are both like heavy team Shelly, giving Huda shit. Mind you, I didn't mention this before, but after Nick and Alandria went on that date, they decided to kiss outside of a challenge. And like the whole big deal with that is like when people kiss and make out in challenges, like people tend not to get jealous about that because it's almost like that's what you're supposed to do in a challenge. Like, people don't put that much weight on that at all, except for maybe like Huda and Jeremiah really early on, when they were like super overprotective of each other. But like that's kind of toxic shit. That's not the norm. But if you are like being physical with each other outside of challenges, that's taken a lot more seriously. And so Nick and Alandria did in fact kiss and soul ties outside of a challenge to explore their relationship. So in that case, how does Alandria have any fucking room to talk when she kissed Nick when she's besties with Cierra? When she knows Cierra and Nick have the strongest connection in the villa. During Casa Amor, when Cierra was purposefully not even getting physical with Elan to be respectful and do right by Nick. Also, don't even get me started on the Nick and Alandria shippers. I will say, Nick does in fact look very happy when talking with Alandria, and I do truly see Alandria igniting a spark in Nick's eye that I have never ever seen before. Nick also did say, and I clocked this immediately in episode 1, that Alandria like pretty much caught his attention off the bat and then doubled down on that after they went on their date and he told her that. However, after their kiss and soul ties, that was the one that was outside of the challenge, the next day, they were both like, ew, that didn't feel right. We're definitely just friends. Glad we can both agree on that. Remember that, guys. And so, like, I think that this whole thing really rubs people the wrong way because, like, they're seeing all these double standards, all this hypocrisy. And then Huda even asked Alandria if she's a terrible person for what she did to Shelly regarding the whole Ace heart rate situation. And Alandria responded, I wouldn't say you're a terrible person. girl? So some other tea that was happening during the heart rate challenge, Alandria was trying to get between Taylor and Clark. Elan was trying to get between Nick and Sierra. And here are the heart rate challenge in case you're curious. So one thing to note about these results is that Pepe and Andreina's results matched. Like, they both got each other's heart rate up the most. However, when she approached him to potentially explore a relationship with him, he rejected her. It seems he's into blondes. Sorry, girl. Then we get to the stand on business game. This game was the messiest, most instigating shit I've ever seen in my 21 years. Basically, the Islanders were instructed to write letters if they've got shit to say, like this was the opportunity to stand on business, if you will. They could either sign it or keep it anonymous, depending on how mean or messy they were gonna be. In this game, Miss Hannah's name, mind you, she's been gone for a little bit of time now. She kept being brought up in relation to Pepe. Matter of fact, he straight up asked the girls, he was the one to bring her up in his letter addressed to Shelly and Sierra and Alandria about why they decided to vote Hannah off. And the girls gave some BS answer about finding connections too soon or whatnot, and how she had the privilege of finding two strong connections with Charlie and Pepe. But who's really to say why they voted the way they did? I really don't know. Anyways, we learned that my boy Pepe has been thinking about Hannah this entire time, ever since she left. And because, I do feel bad for Grayson, because obviously none of this was her fault and she was just put in a really bad situation. But this led Pepe to straight up friend zone Grayson and end their connection, which was unfortunate for her. Nick told Huda that she should have gone home instead of Hannah, which, damn, dude. You act like a friend to her face, defend her when she's not around, and yet advocate for her to be kicked out of the villa thrice. Shelly told Huda that she isn't a girl's girl because of their beef that I previously described to you, which doesn't really make any sense to me, but whatever. Then Alandria gets, actually, it doesn't make sense for the things that Shelly cited in her letter. However, I will say that a couple examples of Huda not being a girl's girl was when she was really, really ragging on Iris and Amaya when they were going after Jeremiah. I don't think that was a girl's girl move to do. But the things that Shelly was listing as for why that Huda's not a girl's girl, I don't agree with that. But then Alandria gets messy and reveals to the group that Huda and Chris kissed in the speakeasy. And that is one of the reasons why Huda isn't a girl's girl, which again, I don't really agree with. And I don't know why that was such a secret to share, a big, a bomb to drop. Because mind you, Chris and Huda are coupled up, officially. It's not scandalous if they're kissing because they're in a couple. And Shelly and Chris, they've barely spoken throughout this whole thing. So it's not like Shelly and Chris are really making moves here. Shelly's always been about Ace. And Alandria literally kissed Nick in soul ties. That's the thing though. How can you paint what Huda did as some super scandalous thing when you did something objectively worse? This is actually the second time that Alandria has aired out dirty laundry about a kiss, because she told Sierra that Nick was kissing Bella way back in the day, and Sierra was like, OMG, that was literally just minutes before me, and Alandria was like, ooh, messy. Alandria was having a tough time that night though, because she was going in on Taylor for ditching her when she put so much effort into him, and then he straight up says in front of everybody that he chooses Clark. So that was pretty scandalous. The real kicker though was when Austin said that Amaya cries more than she needs to and moves too fast for everyone, which causes Ace to pipe up and say, yeah, the whole babe thing was way too much, which causes Zach, aka the dude she's currently coupled up with, to be like, yeah, you actually are too much, and I let you kiss me and stuff even when I don't really want to. So obviously Amaya starts crying because damn, why the dog pile, guys? That was so mean. My girl's just affectionate and you're shaming her for that. Brian was the only one to step up and be like, hey, because saying things like babe or mi amor or mi vida is a part of Hispanic culture, so just gotta be mindful of that. So then the next day, like I said, Pepe and Grayson call it quits. Zach and Amaya call it quits, and she calls him an extremely odd individual, which was pretty funny. Chris and Huda are pretty solid, which was good to see. It was funny because Chris was like, I attract emotionally unstable women. It appears so, bud. It appears so. Then Huda was like, have you ever cheated? And Chris was like, yeah, once, which was kind of funny. Not funny, but like, Jeremiah also cheated once, so there are some patterns going on here. Cierra and Nick go on a date and establish that they're closed off. They're the first in the villa to do so. Then we have the first time the Islanders catch a glimpse of what, or like how America thinks of them. So this was another voting opportunity, except it wasn't like, well, eventually it did lead to Islanders being in jeopardy, but mainly it was like a sort of ranking system. Now the tea is, I'm not 100% sure if this is true. I'm pretty sure it is, but because I wasn't partaking in the voting when this was happening. But I've been seeing a lot of TikToks that said apparently the voting for this particular like America Ranks Burst Your Bubble challenge took place after the heart rate challenge, but before the stand on business challenge. And the stand on business challenge was what really turned the tides against Shelly, or Alandria, and Cierra. And so during this challenge, a lot of people were surprised to see Cierra and Alandria reflected positively in the voting given what had happened. And also, one thing that I need to bring up is that by this point, there had been another development brewing regarding Cierra. Be prepared to get deja vu. I guess during, these recent episodes, screenshots started circulating of Cierra using the C slur to describe her eyes in a negative way in an Instagram story in 2024 as an explanation for why she was getting Botox, I think, there. And this offended the Asian community, and there was a massive outcry to get her off the show, as they did with Yulissa. The removal of Cierra was, I don't think it was as quick as the removal of Yulissa. In fact, viewers were wondering if Cierra was even going to get removed at all, because this is well into the show by this point. And also she had just closed off things with Nick. She was a fan favorite, had a huge following on Instagram. And it's a weird thing to compare slurs, but I don't know, people were arguing that the N slur has a very specific connotation, or the N word has a very specific connotation, and that potentially the C slur wasn't as bad. But then others from the Asian community were like, why the double standard? Asian racism always seems to get overlooked. And the other layer of this, the thing that really added fuel to the flame and fire, was that apparently Cierra had used this slur multiple times. I'm a little bit confused about this, so let me know if you have more insight on this, but she recently released an apology video on TikTok, and I think on Instagram as well, addressing the situation, and Yulissa also did the same, at least on TikTok, I'm 100% sure. But so viewers and Cierra both agree that she used the slur in a 2024 Instagram story, the Botox one that I described to you. And then after she posted that, she was educated by a fan via Instagram DM and immediately removed the story and immediately removed the word from her vocabulary. However, there are screenshots floating around, including an Instagram post from 2015 where the caption included the C slur, as well as screenshots from a DM in 2023 where it seemed like a fan was educating her on the use of the C slur. Now, a lot of people have been throwing around this 2023 DM as proof that Cierra knew what she was doing when she said it again in 2024. However, I'm confused about why there was a DM in 2023 in the first place, because from what I can tell, the instances of her using that word on Instagram were in a 2015 post and in a 2024 DM. Why would they bring it up in a 2023? Was the 2023 DM because of the 2020 or the 2015 post? I am not really sure. I don't know if it's a real DM or not. I've also seen another 2024 DM. In one of the 2024 DMs, she was like, oh, my bad, thanks for informing me. But in another one of the DMs, she was like, oh, thankfully that's not how I used it, which was kind of that wasn't really her taking accountability and getting informed. So anyways, people were really mad at her for that. Oh, another thing that was that made people mad was because of the way that Love Island season 6, at least for USA, was pretty major. There were a lot of people talking about it on TikTok, and I don't know how long this has been going on, but so when you go on Love Island, you bam, get instant fame. Even if you were on the show for a little amount of time Jalen was, he has 1 million+ followers on TikTok now. It can change your life. And so when people like know that they're going to go on Love Island, they know that this is a huge opportunity. So some people designate one or a few of their friends to manage their social media accounts while they're gone, because like I've said before, the Islanders don't have access to their phones, social media, anything like that. The friend that was managing Sierra's Instagram, or maybe TikTok, or just like all of her socials, she came on and said, so she was making fun of all the people saying like, she's gonna be so embarrassed, like Sierra's gonna be so embarrassed when she sees this. And then the friend was like, when she hits 1 million followers in the next 5 days, do you think she's gonna feel embarrassed? Sierra then proceeded to lose hundreds of thousands of followers. She did not, in fact, hit 1 million. It was a bi-sister situation all over again. Her following has since bounced back a bit. I mean, like, the lowest I've seen was somewhere in the 600,000 range, and now she's like in the 700,000 range. So, but we have a bunch of people claiming that Shelly and Sierra have been buying followers, like all of this messy shit. Do I think it's a little weird that she wore a shirt that said empathy on it in her apology video? Yes. Yeah, I definitely honestly feel like she has gotten enough backlash by this point. Anyways, in the next episode, the only explanation we get from the narrator was that Sierra has left the villa due to a personal situation. Although if you're on social media, you know damn well what the personal situation was. However, back to the voter ranking challenge. So all of that was the background necessary for you to fully understand and the weight of these rankings and the reasoning behind these rankings. First, they had the Islanders rank who they thought America would pick. The first category was most to least genuine, and from the most to the least, they picked Elan, TJ, Ace, Nick, Brian, Pepe, Austin, Chris, Taylor, and then Zach. And the voters, America actually picked Pepe, Chris, Zach, Nick, Elan, Brian, TJ, Austin, Ace, and Taylor. So we will see a couple of things. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go through all of the rankings and then we'll analyze what they mean afterwards. So then again, most to least boyfriend material. The Islanders picked Ace, Pepe, Nick, Elan, TJ, Chris, Taylor, Brian, Zach, and then Austin. And then the voters actually picked Pepe, Chris, Nick, Elan, Zach, Brian, TJ, Ace, Austin, and then Taylor. From most to least trustworthy, for the girls, the Islanders ranked Jaden, Shelly, Sierra, Iris, Clark, Grayson, Andrina, Amaya, Alandria, and then Huda. The voters actually picked Amaya, Iris, Alandria, Grayson, Huda, Sierra, Jaden, Shelly, Andrina, and then Clark. And then the girls, from most to least genuine, the Islanders picked Alandria, Amaya, Shelly, Sierra, Iris, Grayson, Clark, Jaden, Andrina. And then the voters, America, actually picked Amaya, Iris, Alandria, Grayson, Huda, Jaden, Sierra, Andrina, Shelly, and then Clark. And then they had one final ranking, which was the couples together, who people like most to least wanted to go on vacation with. The Islanders picked Amaya and Zach, then Ace and Shelly, then Sierra and Nick, then Iris and TJ, then Pepe and Grayson, then Chris and Huda, then Jaden and Austin, then Andrina and Brian, and then Taylor and Clark. And the voters picked Amaya and Zach, then Sierra and Nick, then Grayson and Pepe, then Huda and Chris, then Iris and TJ, then Jaden and Austin, then Andrina and Brian, then Shelly and Ace, and then finally Taylor and Clark. So one thing that you may or may not have noticed is that Taylor and Clark were at the bottom of every single poll. For the boys, Taylor was always at the bottom. For the girls, Clark was always at the bottom. And together, they were at the bottom, the very last spot. Now, this was probably because by this point, Taylor hadn't said outright that he chose Clark, but he has been making it very clear that he is Team Clark, and people were not liking that. I don't really have a problem with either Taylor or Clark, and I do find it unfair that at least like she was getting any sort of hate, because ultimately that this was Taylor's decision. And if you were mad at this new couple, then theoretically Taylor's the one you should be mad at. And another thing to note is that Ace was towards the bottom for both of the categories that he was ranked in. Ace and Shelly were second to last as a couple. And Shelly was also towards the bottom of both of the categories that she was in. And I think that is, for Shelly at least, I think that was a result of the heart rate challenge scenario, because at that point it turned the tides against Shelly, and then people started liking Huda more. And then for Ace, Ace has just not been a likable figure in the villa. I don't think it was any surprise that voters picked Pepe and Chris to be at the top. I mean, they're fan favorites. But I think people were shocked that Alandria was like top 3, pretty high up. And I think they were also surprised that Cierra wasn't like all the way down at the bottom. But one thing that also wasn't surprising was that Amaya, like, she's the people's princess. She was number 1 in every category that it was possible for her to be in. And so, yeah, those are the rankings. Those were the thoughts and feels of America. And it was definitely a bit of a wake-up call, particularly for Ace and Shelley, and Amaya definitely learned from that day on that America was behind your back, so I think that helped her a little bit. Okay, so then we have the classic America votes who their least favorite people are. So the 6 least popular islanders were in jeopardy of leaving right after this ranking challenge. And out of these 6, the islanders would only be able to save 1 person. Usually it's 2, but this time it was just 1. So the 6 people in jeopardy were Jaden, Grayson, Andrena, TJ, Taylor, and Austin. The islanders voted as follows. Elan chose Grayson, I guess to explore that connection potentially. Alandria chose Austin because they're besties. Iris and Zach chose TJ. Iris is in a couple of TJ. I guess Zach was homies with TJ. I don't know. Brian and Chris chose Jaden. Brian is interested in pursuing a connection with Jaden. Chris, I honestly don't know. Maybe solidarity with Brian. I'm not sure. So these were the least voted people. They did in fact get kicked out. Grayson, Austin, TJ, and Jaden all left. Iris was crying up a storm because TJ left, but don't worry, expert comforter Pepe coming her way. Open arms for her to cry in. So the choice was between Andrena and Taylor. Huda, Amaya, and Shelley stood behind Andrena, girl solidarity, I suppose. Clark, Pepe, Nick, and Ace stood behind Taylor. We've got the OG guys, the OG trio, obviously. Clark is in a relationship with, or in a connection with Taylor. Cierra, with the last vote, stood behind Taylor. And then after this voting episode, Cierra left. So Nick and Alandria decided to get back together, which made everyone scream, cry, throw up. Everyone was so happy, but y'all, I'm smelling something stanky, something fishy. Because did they not literally say that their kiss outside of the challenge was like a bad experience? Like they just didn't, that established that they were going to be friends. And all of a sudden, psych, like now sparks are flying. Are they trying to save their asses? Were they lying before about feeling the spark in order to like not make things messy? Who knows, but they were definitely lying at some point, right? Amaya and Brian start a connection with each other. And everyone is a fan of this, considering how Brian stood up for her during the Stand on Business challenge, and Amaya's the people's princess, so obviously they're going to support whatever couple she's in. So people really like Pepe and Iris. Of course, he's going to go after the recently widowed blonde. I think they're both cool individually. I like them as a couple. I'm definitely charmed by Pepe. Can't blame Iris whatsoever. So those are the 3 couples. Pepe and Iris, Amaya and Brian, and Nick and Alandria, along with Shelley and Ace, Clark and Taylor, and Huda and Chris. Thus, Zach and Elan were single, had to leave the villa. Then the next episode was a baby challenge where couples had to take care of fake babies for the day, which, hello, producers. Why are you trying to make my girl Huda crash out? You're just as bad as the viewers. And you have the audacity to go online to make, public statements and be like, guys, stop the hate on the Islanders. That's not cool. Bullying, knock it off. Racism, knock it off. Who set that system up? Who was the one in charge of recruiting these specific Islanders to the villa? Who was the one creating these scenarios for the Islanders to crash out and look bad? Who was the one editing and sculpting and crafting the narrative? Anyways, Amaya and Brian were chosen to get a night in the hideaway, which is basically like a private room to themselves. Not that the couples needed it in order to get down and dirty. Multiple have gotten it on in the shared bedroom, which is kind of crazy to me, but I don't know, man. Different strokes, different folks, but it seems kind of disrespectful and inconsiderate, but that's just me. Clark and Taylor officially get closed off, and then literally that same night that they decide that they're closed off, immediately get kicked off the island. Not a surprise given recent public opinion about them. Do I think it was warranted? Not really, but Honestly, they were my least favorite couple too. And we're getting down to the wire. Like, even if someone's your least favorite, like, I don't dislike Clark and Taylor, but just like, I have other couples that I like more. Chris and Huda have definitely had their first hiccup, and is actually, surprise, surprise, making certain people dislike Huda yet again. The reason that they were fighting initially, like, there was some tension during the baby challenge, but honestly, I think Chris was really understanding about that, and like, he knew that Huda was going to feel some type of way because of this challenge, so I don't think it was honestly about that at all. I think he was hurt about the fact that Huda didn't want to show any sort of PDA with him and was overly concerned about how the other Islanders were perceiving them. But given how people reacted to her and Jeremiah, like, honestly, I think her concerns are warranted, but, you know, I do think that at times she is very, like, belligerent and very defensive. She's definitely not the best communicator, and she definitely, I think, like, has certain double standards. Like, she expects a lot out of her partner and doesn't give them the same grace. At times, she kept cutting him off, which as a viewer was really frustrating because Huda, girl, it was literally like 4 times in a row. Okay, so I'm officially all caught up with Love Island. The only episode that I haven't seen is the finale, which is coming out tonight if you are watching this right when I post it, so that's super exciting. And honestly, watching these episodes and seeing a bunch of TikTok posts have made me realize that I don't know where I stand anymore. I feel like I was giving y'all a little bit of flack because people's opinions were flip-flopping all over the place, and now I feel the same way. I don't know. So basically, here's what's happened in these last 2 episodes. Chris and Huda kind of left off on their issue, and basically the big thing is Chris is confused why Huda is okay with having sex with him in the bedroom in a room filled with other people, but not like sharing a quick kiss in front of everybody outside in the daylight. Like, that doesn't really make sense to him. And Huda was trying to explain, I guess, that she is a little bit traumatized from her last relationship. And the result of that disagreement was honestly, like, I can understand why people are getting, like, re-frustrated at Huda again, because it seems whenever there's a conflict, like, she's never the one making any sort of compromise. And I do, like, I understand how that is annoying in the long run, for sure. Like, basically the end of that disagreement was just like they were gonna keep continuing how they normally continue, and Huda even made a request at the end of him, and she was just like, yeah, I just need a little bit more reassurance in the morning. Amaya and Brian were also, like, scheming to try to help them figure things out. And basically, I don't really think anything's been resolved, but the topic has just kind of been dropped. Shelly and Ace became exclusive, and they were the ones chosen to go to the hideaway, which, you know, obviously happy for them. I don't think they actually, like, did the deed, though, from what I understand, but, you know, that's just the tea on that. Then we got Families Day, which at first everybody thought that they were going to be able to say hi to their families via a screen, but the surprise was the producers brought 2 members of their family. For most people, I think Alandria was the only one who had only 1 person show up, but 2 people from everyone's families were brought in. The couples got to meet each other's respective families. Honestly, I thought that was really sweet, really wholesome, and I think it was definitely needed in order for, I guess, the audience, because I've seen so many TikToks up until this point of people, like, not really treating the Islanders as people, and I feel like that really humanized them. Because yeah, it's important to remember, y'all, like, these are all people that we're talking about online. They're brothers, sisters, daughters, sons. Let's chill the fuck out. The last episode that I saw, which was the episode just before the finale, was Family Day, and at the end of this episode, a couple had to leave the villa and leave it down to the final 4. And at this point, we have 5. Iris and Pepe, Shelly and Ace, Huda and Chris, Amaya and Brian, and Nick and Alandria. This is based on America's votes of who everyone's favorite couple was, so the couple with the least amount of votes was kicked off, and the couple that was kicked off was Shelly and Ace. I don't know who I would have wanted to go, but I was sad that it ended up being Ace and Shelly because, you know, I've had my disagreements with, you know, certain things that Shelly did or certain things that Ace did, but at the end of the day, like, I really like them together. And by this point, I feel like the hate that they've been receiving online has been, like, way too much. And that basically means the final 4 couples are Nick and Alandria, Chris and Huda, Iris and Pepe, and Amaya and Brian. Basically, I believe the way that the finale works is America votes who their favorite couple is. whoever that couple is, they each receive a letter. In one letter is nothing, in the other letter is $100,000. So they open each person within that couple opens the letter at the same time. One of them will get the 100K, and then one of them will have the opportunity to decide whether to take all of the money themselves or split it amongst the couple. My prediction is that Amaya and Brian are going to win it all and be America's favorite, and they're going to split the 100K. I didn't make it in time to actually participate in the vote, but my vote would also be for Amaya and Brian as well. Amaya's the people's princess. I think that America is 100% behind her, and I actually really like them together. I think that even though it's a newer relationship, all of these arguably are a slightly newer relationship. I don't know, I've just really liked seeing them together. I think that they have a nice connection, and I think that it was really, really sweet. Out of all of the families on Family Day, I really liked Amaya and Brian's family reunion the most. Iris and Pepe being in the final four was a little bit surprising to me, but I do think the people like Pepe and Iris individually, and I will say it, out of all the guys on this season, I have a crush on two people. Chris is my number one and Pepe is my number two. Very charmed by the both of them. Chris and Huda, I think that they've become a staple of the season at this point. Where they're at in their relationship, I don't really know, because at the very end of this last episode, everybody went around saying their favorite moments, and Chris did not even mention Huda in his favorite moments. So I think that, I don't know, maybe they just added that clip in for drama or to make us like unsure. I don't really know. I think it's a hard thing to say. I think Huda has shown that she's got some issues to work on, and she knows that, and we've definitely seen a lot of growth throughout the show. But I do think, like, in terms of making compromises and resolving conflicts in these relationships, I do think that it's a little unfair that she's never really the one who has to make those compromises. And also, like, some of her behavior on the show has been just really not good. I understand public opinion being so split on her because on the one hand, she's done a bunch of bad things, but on the other, I feel like you can tell from watching her throughout this whole show that she doesn't have ill intentions, and I think that that's why people are willing to forgive her. Shelly and Ace, I've disagreed with the whole love bombing, whole Ace situation, and like certain points I was kind of annoyed by him, but at the end of the day, like, I don't really have a problem with him. I like him. And Shelly, the same thing with the whole mean girls narrative. Like, yes, I did disagree with her in certain situations with the heart rate challenge or maybe even the stand on business challenge, but I also still really like her. And I am sad to see them go, especially since they've been here since day one, and you can see the chemistry that they've had since day one. Nick and Alandria, I am skeptical of how, truthful their relationship is. I do think that Nick has been attracted to her since day one, but by this point, like, I don't know how much they're feeding into it due to the fact that they, it's close to the end and they want to make it to the end. I don't really know if I believe the whole friends to lovers thing, but maybe that there's some truth to it. Again, I've disagreed with some of the things that Alandria has done, but I do like her. Nick, I do get annoyed with him, I will say, I really do, but at the end of the day, I don't hate him. One of the things that apparently they usually do in Love Island, but they didn't this year, was they have an episode called Movie Night where the Islanders get to see footage that they haven't seen before of maybe like people shit talking behind their back and stuff, and that's supposed to be all dramatic, but they didn't do that this year, and I think some people were disappointed about that. And I think it was really sad that Shelly and Ace, they got to go to the hideaway. They just became exclusive, and then the next day they were voted off the island. It was very much giving Taylor and Clark, and I guess it is what it is. The people have spoken. One TikTok that I saw recently was that the reason why Ace was so anti-Jeremiah was because he wanted Huda, and I didn't really see that to be the case in the show. However, people have been saying that Ace was all up in Huda's likes like way before the show, so that is definitely interesting. Another thing that I wanted to mention of things that I've been seeing recently is that there have been some developments regarding TJ, Austin, and Nick. Nick, he made this post about a cat at the vet or something on a table, and one of the hashtags that he used in this TikTok was hashtag Chinese, so racism there. People were not too happy about finding that post. In terms of Austin and Yulissa, on TikTok, apparently a bunch of those reposts have been pro-Trump reposts, so if you've been seeing hate towards them on TikTok, like, that's why. People have been saying that some of Austin's reposts have been like really weird, representing very MAGA ideologies. And then people have been saying that TJ, I've seen 50-50 people. Some of the TikToks TJ's posted have been funny, but also apparently at one point he followed Andrew Tate, but TJ denied like even supporting him at all. But apparently his friend is like a Tate supporter. Apparently TJ also is following or was following at one point Tory Lanez. I didn't know who that was, but apparently he shot Megan Thee Stallion in the foot. I don't know what the fuck is happening anymore, guys. So that's weird, especially when Megan Thee Stallion was the one who introduced TJ to the villa. So that's just catching you up on the TikTok situation that's been happening. So yeah, my experience watching Love Island for the first time was definitely really interesting. By the end of it, honestly, like it was making me happy to see the friendships that have formed over this past month. All of the tea has been crazy. The social media scene has been crazy. Also, it's crazy how people can go into this show for one day and come out with 1 million followers. People who have been cast in the show on Instagram, they maybe had like, I don't know, 2,000 followers. I think Ace had hundreds of thousands of followers before coming in, so it kind of varies. Like, people were either had 0 or hundreds of thousands. A lot of them in between maybe had like 10, 20K. But then they come out of it, like pretty much all of them, if they've been a regular, with hundreds of thousands of followers, if not millions. So being on the show is legitimately life-changing, no matter how much screen time you get. And it's also interesting to see this season in light of the previous season, which was apparently like, it really elevated Love Island USA to a different level. And initially, actually, people were wondering, like, in the midst of the success of Love Island season 6, like, are people who are currently on the show here for the right reasons? Are they trying to game the system? Like, what are their true intentions? Is this just a game to them? Are they being performative? Are they doing things to try and make TikTok edits? I don't know. Probably, maybe subconsciously if they're online, but I don't know. Hopefully, if you haven't seen anything about Love Island at all, this wasn't too confusing to follow. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are on the matter, because honestly, like, at the end of the day, I'm really trying not to be too harsh on these people. I mean, I can't imagine, like, being sleep deprived in bikinis every day, like sweaty, bug infested, and having cameras on me 24/7, being mic'd up 24/7, not knowing what day it is, not knowing what time it is, being completely cut off from the outside world. Like, obviously, the conditions that they're in, they're trying to instigate drama. I mean, like, these people are tired and angry. Of course some shit is gonna go down. Of course they're gonna say things they don't mean. So I'm trying to give people some grace here. Anyways, yeah, that's the tea. I hope you enjoyed. It's been fun as always, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye!